2:11 a.m. The family group chat exploded. 83 missed calls, 41 messages. I typed back exactly 7 words, exactly what you all asked for. The afternoon before, my son stood in the middle of the graduation party and sneered, "She can't even pay her own rent." Everyone laughed. I silently counted every transfer that had saved them. They didn't know what the paper in my purse was. Not a bill. The original deed. That night, I cancelled every automatic payment. The next morning, I knocked on their door with legal documents, spreadsheets, and one signature that would change everything. My name is Eleanor Whitaker Nora, to those who still bother with familiarity, and at 63, I've learned that the cruelest cuts come from those you've bled for most. The late June sun blazed over my son Matt's backyard in Cedar Hollow, Colorado, where 100 guests celebrated Logan's summer internship at some tech firm downtown. Brianna Bree, as she insisted everyone call her, had orchestrated the entire affair with military precision. Color-coded tablecloths, catered appetizers arranged by height, even assigned stations for family members. Mine, the beverage table, naturally. The widow's corner, where I could be useful but invisible. "The lemonade needs more ice. Eleanor," Bree called out, not looking up from her phone. Never Mom, never Nora, always Eleanor. Like I was hired help. I hefted another bag of ice from the cooler, my arthritis protesting in the July heat. Across the lawn, Matt held court with his contractor buddies. Bourbon flowing freely from bottles, I recognized the good stuff from my late husband Robert's collection. Bottles Matt had borrowed from my basement last Christmas. "Your daughter-in-law throws quite the party," said Mrs. Henderson from next door, sampling a canapé that probably cost more than my weekly groceries. "Yes, Bree has excellent taste," I replied, not mentioning that the deposit for this catering company had mysteriously appeared on my credit card statement last month. Another mix-up I'd let slide. That's when Matt's voice boomed across the garden, 3 bourbons deep and performing for his audience. "Mum thinks she's helping with Logan's college expenses." He laughed, that harsh bark I'd heard too often lately. "She can't even pay her own rent. We've been covering her for months." The yard didn't go silent, that only happens in movies. Instead, there was a ripple of uncomfortable laughter, eyes sliding toward me then away, the way people look at roadkill. Mrs. Henderson suddenly found her phone fascinating. Logan's girlfriend whispered something to him. And Bree. She smirked, raising her Prosecco in a mock toast. I stood there, ice bag dripping onto my good sandals, mentally tallying the truth. The $840 monthly for the family phone plan, all 6 lines. The car insurance for Logan's Accord, $312 quarterly. The emergency mortgage payments when Matt's renovation business hit rough patches, $4,000 here, $6,000 there. The business dinners charged to my card. The country club membership Bree needed for her networking. 5 years of bleeding. Penny by penny. Nearly $300,000 gone into the black hole of their manufactured crises. Nora. The ice. Bree's voice cut through my calculation. "Honestly, it's like you're somewhere else these days." I poured the ice, watched it crack and settle, and smiled. The kind of smile Robert used to call my litigation face from my paralegal days. The rest of the party blurred past. I served drinks, cleared plates, endured the pitying looks, and whispered speculations about my declining situation. Matt avoided eye contact. Bree made sure to loudly mention their upcoming vacation to Cabo, a much-needed break from all the stress of supporting everyone. at 10:47 p. After the last guest departed, and I'd loaded the dishwasher because, Eleanor, you're so much better at getting things really clean. My phone lit up with the family group chat, the one Bree had created and christened Whittaker Warriors. Matt, family meeting tomorrow. Time to discuss Mum's living situation. Bree, we can't keep enabling this codependency. Logan, maybe we should talk about this in person. Bree, no, transparency is important. Your grandmother needs to understand she's no longer part of the nuclear family unit. It's affecting our marriage and Logan's future. Matt, Mum, you need to accept that Dad's pension isn't enough anymore. We've been patient, but our resources aren't unlimited. I sat in my car outside their house, reading each message twice. The pension Robert had carefully structured. That covered my mortgage and bills with room to spare. The pension they thought I depended on, not knowing about the rental properties, the investment accounts, the LLC I'd formed 2 years ago when I started suspecting their intentions. I typed back, "Thank you for clarifying. I'll cancel all automatic payments effective immediately." Then I drove home, poured myself a glass of Robert's secret stash, the bottle of Macallan he'd hidden behind the water heater, and called my bank. Yes, I need to cancel several automatic transfers, I told the night service representative. All of them, actually. Every single one. The family chat exploded before I'd finished my first sip. 83 missed calls by morning. 41 increasingly frantic messages. But I was already meeting with Marjorie Keats, my financial advisor, spreading 5 years of statements across her mahogany desk like evidence at trial. Marjorie Keats had been managing portfolios for 30 years, but even she whistled low when we finished tallying the numbers. The conference room at Harbour Ridge Credit Union felt smaller with each statement we spread across the table. $287,462, she said, removing her reading glasses. In 5 years? Nora, that's not support, that's hemorrhaging. I'd brought everything. Bank statements, credit card records, cancelled checks, even screenshots of text messages requesting quick loans and temporary help. The evidence formed a damning paper trail across the mahogany surface. Look at this pattern. Marjorie traced her finger down a column of transactions. Every crisis conveniently timed right before their vacations, renovations, purchases. The bathroom emergency that cost you $8,000. They posted photos from Vale 2 days later. My phone buzzed incessantly. Bree had moved from the group chat to individual bombardment. Eleanor, there's been a misunderstanding. The mortgage payment is due in 3 days. Logan's tuition installment. This is elder abuse. You're not thinking clearly. I turned the phone face down and focused on Marjorie's laptop screen. She'd created a spreadsheet that would make a forensic accountant weep with joy. Every transfer categorized, dated, cross-referenced with their social media posts and the business records I could access. You need legal counsel, Marjorie said. I know someone who specializes in financial exploitation cases. Carla Mendoza. She's handled situations where family members take advantage of elderly relatives. I'm not elderly, I protested. I'm 63. Legally, you're a protected class. And this? She gestured at the papers. This is textbook exploitation. They've been using your credit, your accounts, treating you like an ATM while publicly humiliating you. Carla will have a field day. That afternoon, I sat in Carla Mendoza's office in downtown Cedar Hollow. watching her review the documentation with the intensity of a hunter tracking prey. "The business expenses charged to your personal cards are particularly interesting," she said, her pen tapping against a printout. "If Matt's company, Whitaker Renovations, claimed these as business deductions while you paid them personally, that's fraud. IRS fraud. Specifically." "I don't want to destroy him," I said quietly. "He's still my son. He destroyed the relationship when he decided to exploit you. What you're doing now is protecting yourself and establishing boundaries." Carla pulled out a legal pad. "First step, formal demand for accounting. Every penny they've received needs documentation. Second, cease and desist on the defamation. Telling neighbors you're mentally declining while taking your money, that's slander with financial motive." My phone lit up with a call from Logan. I almost answered. He'd always been the sweet one, caught between his parents' schemes. Carla shook her head. "No contact until we establish the framework. Any communication goes through me now." I spent the next 3 days transforming my dining room into a war room. Robert's old filing system proved invaluable. He'd taught me to document everything during his years in insurance. I opened a new account at a different bank, transferred my funds, and titled it something that made me smile: Freedom Fund. The doorbell rang at 6:15 on day 4. Matt stood on my porch, unshaven, still in yesterday's clothes. "Mum? What the hell?" The phone bill got shut off. The car insurance lapsed. Logan can't even access his college portal. "Good morning to you too, Matthew." I didn't open the storm door. "You can't just abandon your family." Interesting choice of words. According to Bree, I'm not part of the nuclear family unit anymore. Remember? His face flushed. She didn't mean it like that. "Look, we need to talk. As a family. My attorney will be in touch about scheduling a meeting." "Attorney Mom, for Christ's sake." "The same attorney who's very interested in why Whitaker Renovations claimed entertainment expenses that were charged to my personal credit cards. The IRS might be interested too." He paled. Behind him, Bree's white Mercedes screeched into my driveway. "Eleanor." She stormed up the walkway, her yoga pants and oversized sunglasses suggesting a rough morning. "This is manipulation, financial abuse of your own family." I actually laughed. "Projection is fascinating, isn't it? Everything you accused me of, you've been doing, but with evidence. We'll contest any changes. Say you're not competent. Try it." I held up my phone. "Recording. Please, keep talking about your plans to declare me incompetent while stealing from me. Carla would love this for court." Logan's Honda pulled up behind his mother's car. He looked exhausted, confused, younger than his 20 years. When he caught my eye through the storm door, I saw Robert's kindness there, buried under his parents' influence. "Grandma." His voice cracked slightly. "Can we please just talk?" That almost broke me. Almost. "Your parents know how to reach my attorney," I said, then closed the inner door. I watched through the peephole as they argued in my driveway, Bree gesticulating wildly, Matt pacing, Logan standing apart with his hands in his pockets. Finally, they left. That evening, I met with Elaine Hart, a boundaries coach Carla had recommended. "You're not cutting them off," Elaine explained over tea. "You're cutting off their access to exploit you. There's a difference. It feels cruel. What's cruel is taking $300,000 from a widow while telling everyone she's a burden. You're not the villain in this story, Nora. You're finally becoming the hero. Carla Mendoza's investigation into Whitaker renovations revealed a pattern so brazen. She actually laughed during our next meeting. The evidence spread across her desk painted a picture of systematic financial exploitation that would make a con artist proud. Your son claimed $43,000 in client entertainment last year, she said, highlighting rows on a tax document. Guess whose credit card statements match those exact amounts and dates? Mine, naturally. The client dinners at Morton's Steakhouse, the golf memberships at Cherry Creek Country Club, the weekend business retreats to Aspen, all charged to my cards as personal expenses, while Matt wrote them off as business deductions. This is tax fraud. Nora. He's been double-dipping having you pay while claiming the deduction. The IRS offers whistleblower rewards for cases like this. I don't want money from the IRS, I said. I want my son to understand what he's done. Then we use it as leverage. The threat alone should bring them to the table. Meanwhile, Bree had launched her own campaign. She'd been making rounds through the neighborhood, her version of events spreading like wildfire through Cedar Hollow's gossipy suburban network. According to Mrs. Patterson, who nervously called to check on me, Bree was telling everyone I'd been showing signs of dementia, and they'd been heroically managing my decline while I refused help. She said you've been forgetting to pay bills, mixing up your medications. Mrs. Patterson whispered over the phone. Even suggested you might need to be evaluated for assisted living. I thanked her and immediately called Carla. Within hours, Bree received a cease and desist letter via certified mail, with copies sent to every neighbor she'd spoken to. The letter detailed the legal consequences of defamation, particularly when tied to financial exploitation. The documentation process revealed more disturbing patterns. Matt had added himself as an authorized user on 3 of my credit cards without my knowledge forms, signed with a forgery so clumsy it insulted my intelligence. Bree had been using my Costco membership to buy inventory for her failed MLM ventures, then returning items for cash. Even Logan, sweet Logan, had been complicit. Though his theft was smaller textbooks charged to my account, while his parents gave him cash for expenses that went straight to parties. But the real shock came when I deep dove into my own financial records with Marjorie. Hidden among legitimate transactions were recurring payments I'd never noticed small amounts. $10 here, $25 there. Subscriptions and services I'd never signed up for. Death by 1,000 paper cuts. They've been skimming for longer than 5 years, Marjorie said grimly. This goes back to right after Robert's funeral. They started small, testing boundaries. Robert's funeral. When I was drowning in grief, barely functional, grateful for any help with paperwork and decisions. They'd seen opportunity in my vulnerability. That night, Logan texted me privately, "Grandma, I know you're angry. I'm sorry about the party. Dad was drunk. Can we talk without lawyers?" I stared at his message for an hour before responding. Your apology should include returning the $1,600 in textbooks charged to my account this semester. I didn't know they were using your card. They said you offered. Check your receipts. Logan. The billing address is mine. You knew. The dots appeared and disappeared several times before he finally wrote, "I'll pay you back. I promise." Your parents promised too. Promises mean nothing without action. He didn't respond. 3 days later, Matt attempted a new strategy. He showed up at Harbor Ridge Credit Union while I was meeting with Marjorie, somehow knowing my appointment time. Security prevented him from entering the conference room. but his shouting carried through the walls. She's stealing from her own family, elder financial abuse. I want to see her accounts. Marjorie calmly called the police while I recorded everything on my phone. The officers who responded looked embarrassed when Matt claimed he had power of attorney and demanded access to my finances. Sir, do you have documentation of this power of attorney? Officer Martinez asked. We're working on the paperwork, but I'm her son. She's not well. Ma'am. Officer Martinez turned to me. Are you being coerced or threatened? Officer, I'm a 63-year-old woman with full mental faculties, my own financial advisor, and an attorney. My son is upset because I've stopped funding his lifestyle. I'd like him trespassed from this property. The humiliation on Matt's face as he was escorted out was worth every penny I'd lost. That evening, Bree escalated. She created a Facebook post in the Cedar Hollow community group, worried about an elderly neighbor showing signs of cognitive decline. What resources are available for families dealing with resistant seniors? She didn't name me, but the comments made it clear everyone knew. Suggestions poured in about adult protective services, competency hearings, getting guardianship. One neighbor even offered to testify about seeing me confused at the grocery store a day I'd been in Denver for a medical appointment, with receipts to prove it. Carla screenshot everything. She's building a false narrative to support a competency claim. This is coordinated. Let her, I said, surprising myself with my calm. I've been documenting everything too. I posted my own response to the community group. Thank you all for your concern. I'm perfectly healthy and mentally sound. However, I am dealing with family members who've stolen nearly $300,000 from me over 5 years and are now attempting to discredit me because I've cut them off financially. My attorney, Carla Mendoza, has documentation of this financial exploitation. I'm sharing this publicly because defamation thrives in darkness. Also attached are the cease and desist letters sent to certain parties. I appreciate your support during this difficult time. I attached the letters with key sections highlighted. The post went viral in our small community within hours. The revelation came accidentally, during a routine review of my investment portfolio with Marjorie. She was updating my assets spreadsheet when she paused at a line item I'd almost forgotten about. Juniper Row Holdings, LLC, she read. This is showing a rental property on Maple Street. Isn't that where Matt and Bree live? I felt the blood drain from my face, then rush back with a surge of adrenaline. Oh my God, I completely forgot. It wasn't senility, it was the fog of grief and systematic distraction. Robert had set up the LLC just months before his diagnosis, purchasing the duplex as an investment property. For our retirement income, he'd said, kissing my forehead. After he died, Matt had approached me about needing a place. Urgently, Bree was pregnant with a baby they'd later lose, and their apartment lease was ending. I'd offered them the rental at below market rate, handling everything through the property management company to avoid awkwardness about rent payments. Except I'd been so overwhelmed with grief, then so buried under their manufactured crises. I'd never followed up when the property management company dissolved 2 years ago. The rental income had stopped, but Matt and Bree kept living there. They'd counted on my distraction, my grief, my trust. Pull up the original lease, I told Marjorie, my paralegal instincts kicking in. The document appeared on her screen. A 2-year lease at $2,500 monthly, signed in August 2021. It had expired over a year ago. No renewal. No rent payments for 24 months. They're squatters, Marjorie said bluntly. owing $60,000 in back rent, plus penalties. But it was worse than that. Carla discovered during a property records search that Matt had been telling people he owned the duplex, even listing it as collateral for a business loan. The unauthorized modifications became clear when I drove by. That night, the garage converted to a workshop, a deck addition that violated setback requirements, even a new concrete pad poured for Bree's she-shed home office. They've been improving property they don't own while claiming ownership to others, Carla said, reviewing photos I'd taken. This is fraud on multiple levels, plus those modifications without permits code violations. The city will fine you as the owner unless we act fast. I sat in my living room that night, staring at the original deed, Juniper Row Holdings, LLC, managing member Eleanor N. Whitaker. The property worth $400,000 in today's market. Maybe more with the improvements they'd made without permission. The irony was delicious. They'd increased the value of my asset while stealing from me. We need to move fast, Carla advised the next morning. Colorado law requires proper notice for month-to-month tenancy termination. Since their lease expired and they've paid no rent, we can issue a 3-day pay or quit notice. Do it, I said. But I wanted more than eviction. I wanted them to understand the position they'd put themselves in. So I prepared a comprehensive package, the original deed, the expired lease, 2 years of missing rent calculations, documentation of unauthorized modifications, the fraudulent loan document where Matt claimed ownership, and screenshots of Bree advertising her home business at her property. I also included an alternative, a settlement agreement, full repayment of the stolen funds over 5 years, public acknowledgement of the financial exploitation, immediate vacation of the property, and a signed statement that they had no claim to any of my assets, present or future. You're giving them an out, Carla observed. Why? Because I'm not them, I replied. I'm offering what they never gave me a choice. The 3-day notice was served at 8:30 on a Thursday. The process server's body camera footage, which Carla obtained, was almost comedic. Bree answered in her robe, accepted the envelope cheerfully, thinking it was a package, then screamed so loudly that neighbors came outside. Matt called me 17 times in the next hour. I didn't answer. He texted, "You don't own this house." I replied with a photo of the deed. Then, "We improved it. We have rights." I sent him the statute on unauthorized improvements to rental property. Finally, "Mom, please, let's talk." "Through attorneys only," I responded. They tried to get clever, calling the property management company I'd originally used, only to discover it had dissolved. They contacted the city, claiming ownership, only to be informed that Juniper Row Holdings, LLC, was the registered owner, and they'd be receiving citations for unpermitted modifications. Logan came by that evening, alone. I watched him through the Ring doorbell as he stood on my porch, looking lost. "Grandma, I know you won't open the door, but I need you to know I didn't know about the house. They told me you gave it to them. I found out today when Mom was screaming at Dad about the deed." He paused, running his hand through his hair, so like Robert at that age. "I'm staying with my girlfriend now. I can't be part of this anymore. I'm sorry. For all of it. I'll get a job. Pay you back for the books. I promise. I wanted you to know that I didn't know about the house." He left an envelope on the porch. Inside was a handwritten letter of apology and a check for $200 post-dated to his next payday. A start. Bree tried a different approach, showing up at my church that Sunday, mascara strategically smeared, approaching the prayer group I attended. "Please," she sobbed to the church ladies, "talk to Eleanor. She's throwing us onto the streets. We have nowhere to go." Mrs. Delacroix, 87 and sharp as a surgical scalpel, patted Bree's hand. "Dear, didn't you just post photos from Cabo? Perhaps you could use that vacation fund for rent." The prayer group tittered. I hadn't said a word to them, but Cedar Hollow is small. Everyone knew. The confrontation came at 5:43 a.m. on a Tuesday, 3 days after the pay or quit notice expired. I was brewing coffee when the pounding started, not knocking, but full-fisted pounding that rattled my front door. "Open up. Mum, we know you're in there." I calmly set my phone to record, gathered the thick manila folder I'd prepared for this moment, and opened the door with the chain still on. Matt's face was mottled red, his contractor's bulk filling the doorframe. Behind him, Bree stood with arms crossed, her usual polished appearance replaced by unwashed hair and yesterday's athleisure. "You need to call off your lawyer," Matt demanded. "Now." "Good morning to you too?" I kept my voice steady, though my heart hammered. "I assume you received the eviction filing." "You can't evict us from our home." "My home," I corrected, opening the folder and holding up the deed where he could see it. "Owned by Juniper Row Holdings, LLC, of which I am the sole member." "We've been paying rent," Bree shrieked. "Really?" I pulled out the bank statements. "Show me one payment, just one. In 2 years?" They exchanged glances the kind married couples develop when their lies need quick coordination. "We paid the property management," Matt started. "That company dissolved in January 2023. I showed him the state filing. You've known for 2 years you weren't paying anyone. That's intentional theft of services. We maintained the property, the improvements alone. The illegal modifications. I found out the code violations from the city. 4 citations. 12,000 in fines. All in my name. Plus this fascinating document." I held up the loan application, "where you listed my property as your collateral for a $75,000 business loan. That's fraud. Matthew." His face went from red to ash. "You don't understand business. I was a paralegal for 28 years. I understand fraud." I pulled out another document. "I also understand that you claimed $43,000 in business expenses that were charged to my personal cards. The IRS will find that fascinating. You threatening me? I'm showing you facts. Documented, notarized, legally obtained facts." I shifted the folder so they could see the thickness of evidence. Every text asking for money, every falsified authorization, every forged signature. Oh yes, we had those analyzed. Every single lie catalogued and verified. Bree lunged forward, but the chain held. "You vindictive old bitch. We're going to have you declared incompetent." I smiled Robert's litigation face in full effect. "Please do. I've already scheduled a comprehensive cognitive evaluation with Dr. Marcus Webb at Cedar Hollow Neurological. Would you like to see my perfect scores from last week? Or perhaps the letter from him stating I show no signs of any cognitive decline? That won't hold up. Neither will your claim that I'm incompetent while simultaneously alleging I'm masterminding some elaborate revenge scheme. Pick a lane. Brianna." Matt grabbed Bree's arm, pulling her back. His voice dropped to what he probably thought was menacing. "Mom, you don't want this to get ugly. We know things. About Dad. About his business." My blood chilled. but I kept my face neutral. What things? Insurance policies, discrepancies, things that might interest investigators. For a moment, I was stunned. Then I laughed, really laughed, deep and genuine. You mean the life insurance, the policies you tried to claim as beneficiaries but couldn't because Robert explicitly excluded you after you stole from him in 2018? Oh, yes. Matthew. I know about that too. He kept records, meticulous records. I pulled out the final document, Robert's handwritten letter, dated 6 months before his death, detailing Matt's previous theft and why he'd changed his will and insurance beneficiaries. Notarized, witnessed, bulletproof. Your father knew exactly what you were, I said quietly. He hoped you'd change. I hoped you'd change. Instead, you waited until he was dead to try again. Matt's fists clenched. For a second, I thought he might actually break down the door. Then Bree's phone rang their lawyer, from what I could hear. She went pale, listening. They can't know. That's not. We'll sue. When she hung up, she looked defeated. They're filing criminal charges if we don't sign the settlement. What settlement? Matt turned on her. I answered for her. The one your lawyer should have discussed with you. Full restitution over 5 years. Immediate vacation of my property. Public acknowledgement of financial exploitation. And permanent cessation of all claims against my estate. Or, Matt's voice cracked. Or Carla proceeds with criminal fraud charges, IRS whistleblower claims, and civil suits for defamation, elder financial exploitation, and theft of services. Your choice. You'd send your own son to prison. You'd steal from your own mother. I countered. Actions have consequences. Matthew. You taught me that at the party. Remember? When you announced I couldn't even pay rent? Well, you're right. I don't pay rent. I collect it. Or I should have been. From you. A neighbor's door opened. Jensen, walking his dog but obviously drawn by the drama. Then Mrs. Patterson appeared on her porch with her coffee. The suburban theatre had an audience. This isn't over, Matt growled. Actually, it is. You have 48 hours to accept the settlement or Carla files charges. And Matthew. The locks are being changed at the Maple Street property today. Don't try to enter. There will be security cameras and a restraining order if necessary. I started to close the door, then paused. Oh, and Logan's been in touch. He's genuinely remorseful and making payments. You might learn from your son. The last thing I saw before closing the door was Bree slapping Matt's arm, hissing about him promising the house was theirs, and Matt looking like a cornered animal realizing the cage door had already shut. The mediation was scheduled for 2 p.m. at the Cedar Hollow County Courthouse, in a sterile conference room that smelled of burnt coffee and broken dreams. I arrived early with Carla, spreading our documents across our half of the table like artillery positions before battle. Matt and Bree entered with their attorney, a nervous young man named Derek Phillips, who looked fresh out of law school. His suit was too big, his confidence too small for the heavyweight bout he'd wandered into. Let's begin with your client's counteroffer. The mediator. Judge Patricia Reeves, retired, said with the weariness of someone who'd refereed family destruction for decades. Derek cleared his throat. My clients are willing to pay $50,000 over 10 years, with the understanding that the Maple Street property transfers to their ownership after completion of payments. I actually snorted. Carla placed a restraining hand on my arm, but smiled herself. Your clients? Carla responded. Owe my client $60,000 in back rent alone. They've stolen $287,000 over 5 years. They've committed tax fraud, bank fraud, and defamation. And they want to buy a $400,000 property for $50,000. Did I understand that correctly? The improvements they made. Derek started, were illegal and resulted in $12,000 in fines to my client. Carla interrupted, sliding the citations across the table. Should we add destruction of property to the criminal charges? Bree leaned forward. Eleanor is being vindictive. We're family. You declared my client wasn't part of your nuclear family unit, Carla quoted from the screenshots. You can't claim family when convenient and discard it when not. Judge Reeves reviewed our documentation, her expression growing stonier with each page. Mr. Phillips, have you actually reviewed the evidence against your clients? Derek flushed. We've had limited time. Then let me summarize. The judge said, I see check fraud, credit card fraud, tax fraud, potentially elder abuse, definite defamation, and what appears to be an attempted guardianship scam. Your clients are fortunate misses. Whitaker is offering settlement instead of pursuing criminal charges. Matt slammed his hand on the table. She set us up. She knew about the house all along. I forgot about the property in my grief, I said, my voice steady. While you were stealing from me, I was trying to survive losing my husband. The fact that you lived rent-free in my property while telling everyone I couldn't pay my own rent is irony, not entrapment. We'll go public, Bree threatened. Tell everyone how you're treating us. I pulled out my phone, showing the Facebook post with over 300 reactions and 97 comments supporting me. You already went public. It didn't work out how you planned. Judge Reeves interjected. Let's focus on resolution. Mrs. Whitaker. What are your terms? Carla presented our settlement. Full restitution of $287,000 over 5 years, with 15% interest. Immediate vacation of the Maple Street property. Written acknowledgement of financial exploitation. Agreement to no further contact, except through legal channels regarding repayment. That's insane, Matt shouted. We don't have that kind of money. Then we proceed with criminal charges. Carla said simply, the IRS whistleblower reward alone would recover 30% of the tax fraud. Prison time, of course, would make payment plans moot. Prison? Derek looked panicked. No one mentioned prison. Carla smiled like a shark. Tax fraud over $25,000 is a federal felony. The business loan fraud is another felony. Elder financial exploitation in Colorado over $5,000, also a felony. Should I continue? The room went silent. Bree was crying real tears this time, not the performative ones from church. Matt stared at the table like it might open and swallow him. We need a moment, Derek stammered. During the break, I stood by the window watching downtown Cedar Hollow bustle with afternoon traffic. Normal people living normal lives without family trying to destroy them. Carla joined me. You're doing the right thing, she said. Then why do I feel like I'm dying inside? Because healthy people feel pain when forced to hurt those they love, even in self-defense. It's what separates you from them. When everyone reconvened, Derek looked defeated. My clients will accept the original settlement terms with one modification 7 years instead of 5 for repayment. 5 years, I said firmly. They stole it in 5. They can repay it in 5. Matt's business pulls 6 figures when he's not gambling it away. They can manage. How did you? Matt started, then stopped. Your business banking records became evidence when you commingled personal and business fraud, Carla explained. The casino withdrawals are particularly interesting next to your claims of financial hardship. Judge Reeves nodded. 5 years seems reasonable given the business income evidence. We want visitation with Logan, Bree added desperately. He's our son. Logan is 20 years old, I replied. He makes his own choices. He's chosen distance from you, not me. You poisoned him against us. You poisoned yourselves with greed. I just stopped being the antidote. Derek whispered urgently to his clients. Finally. Matt spoke, his voice hoarse. We'll sign. The documents were prepared with mechanical efficiency. Watching Matt sign his name, the same signature he'd forged on my credit applications, felt surreal. Bree's hand shook as she acknowledged the exploitation, agreed to the repayment schedule, and accepted the eviction terms. 30 days to vacate, Carla stated. Any property damage will result in criminal charges being filed immediately. 30 days, Bree gasped. That's impossible. That's generous, Judge Reeves corrected. Given the circumstances, Mrs. Whitaker could demand immediate evacuation. I stood to leave, but Matt's broken voice stopped me. Why? Mum, why did it have to come to this? I turned back, looking at my son, really looking at him for perhaps the first time since Robert's funeral. The golden boy who'd become a stranger. The child I'd raised who'd become my exploiter. You tell me, Matthew, why did you feel entitled to destroy me? Why wasn't being loved enough? He had no answer. They never do. The eviction hearing was scheduled for 9 on a Thursday, 3 weeks after mediation. Matt and Bree had ignored the settlement agreement, hadn't vacated the property, and made no payments. Their final gambit would happen in courtroom 3B of the Cedar Hollow District Court. I sat with Carla at the plaintiff's table, the original deed tucked in my portfolio like a loaded weapon. Across from us, Matt and Bree huddled with a different attorney, someone expensive-looking in a $1,000 suit who'd clearly been brought in as a last resort. All rise for the Honourable Judge Michael Thornton, the bailiff announced. Judge Thornton, known for his no-nonsense approach to property disputes, reviewed the case file with surgical precision. I see we have an eviction proceeding with some unusual circumstances. Counsel, present your arguments. The new attorney, James Fitzgerald, stood with theatrical confidence. Your Honour, my clients have been residents of this property for 3 years, making substantial improvements. They believed in good faith they were purchasing the property from Mrs. Whitaker through sweat equity arrangements. Do you have documentation of this arrangement? Judge Thornton asked. It was a verbal agreement between family members. So, no. The judge turned to Carla. Counselor. Carla stood, placing the deed on the podium. Your Honour, I present the original deed showing Juniper Row Holdings, LLC, managed solely by Eleanor Whitaker as the owner. The expired lease from 2021. 24 months of non-payment. And this signed settlement agreement from 3 weeks ago where Mr. and Mrs. Whitaker acknowledged they were tenants, not owners. Fitzgerald scrambled. That agreement was signed under duress. In front of a mediator and 3 attorneys, Judge Thornton's eyebrows rose. Continue, Ms. Mendoza. Furthermore, Carla added, we have evidence of the defendants fraudulently claiming ownership to secure a business loan, and code violations from unauthorized modifications totaling $12,000 in fines. Bree suddenly stood up. She can't even afford that house. She's doing this out of spite. Ma'am, sit down, Judge Thornton commanded. You'll have your opportunity to speak. But Bree was beyond control. Do you know what we've been through? Taking care of her? She can't even pay her own bills. The whole neighborhood knows. Actually, I said, standing slowly. That's the point. Judge Thornton looked at me. Mrs. Whitaker, please address the court properly. My apologies, Your Honor. May I speak? He nodded. I opened my portfolio, pulling out the deed. Your Honor, for 2 years, my son and daughter-in-law have lived rent-free in my property while telling everyone I couldn't afford rent. They've taken nearly $300,000 from me while claiming I was a burden. They attempted to have me declared incompetent while stealing from me. I walked forward, placing the deed on the judge's bench. This isn't about revenge. It's about truth. The truth is, I own that property. They are squatters who've exhausted my patience and violated a legal settlement. I'm 63 years old, Your Honor. I'm tired of being stolen from by people who claim to love me. The courtroom was silent. Matt finally spoke, his voice desperate. Mum, please, don't do this. We're family. You ended that family when you declared I wasn't part of it, I replied, not looking at him. Your Honor, I'm requesting immediate eviction and enforcement of the settlement agreement. Judge Thornton studied the deed, then the settlement, then the faces before him. Mr. Fitzgerald, do your clients dispute that this deed is legitimate? Fitzgerald whispered with Matt and Bree, then stood. No, Your Honor. Do they dispute that they signed this settlement agreement? They question its fairness. That wasn't my question. Did they sign it? Yes, Your Honor. Judge Thornton's gavel was swift. I find in favor of the plaintiff. The defendants have 7 days to vacate the property. Any items not removed will be considered abandoned. The settlement agreement stands and will be enforced through wage garnishment if necessary. 7 days! Bree shrieked. Where are we supposed to go? That's not the court's concern, Judge Thornton replied. You had 30 days under the settlement you violated. 7 days is generous. Matt stood, his face purple with rage. You're destroying your own grandchild's future. Logan is 20 and has already separated from you, I said calmly. His future is his own. This isn't over, Matt growled. The same threat he'd made weeks ago. Judge Thornton's voice cut through. Mr. Whitaker. That sounded like a threat. Would you like to add contempt charges to your problems? Fitzgerald grabbed Matt's arm, pulling him back. We're leaving, Your Honor. As they gathered their things, Bree turned to me one last time. I hope you die alone, you vindictive witch. I pulled out the deed, holding it up so she could see my signature clearly. I'd rather die alone than live being robbed. The bailiff escorted them out as they continued shouting threats and profanities. The courtroom fell quiet, except for the rustling of papers as Judge Thornton signed the eviction order. Mrs. Whitaker, he said, looking at me over his glasses. I'm sorry you had to go through this. Family property disputes are always the ugliest. It wasn't about the property, Your Honor. It was about respect. The house just became the proof they never had any. Outside the courthouse, Carla and I stood in the morning sunshine. The protesters Matt had apparently organized 3 of his contractor buddies with hastily made signs about elder abuse looked embarrassed when court security told them to move along. "What now?" Carla asked. "Now I change the locks, repair my property, and rent it to strangers who'll treat it better than family did." My phone buzzed. "Logan. Grandma. I heard what happened. I'm so sorry. I just made my first payment. See attached." A screenshot showed a transfer of $500 to my account, more than the promised $200. His message continued. "I'm working 2 jobs now. I'll make this right. You deserved better from all of us." I texted back, "You're already doing better? That's all I wanted." Carla smiled, reading over my shoulder. "At least one of them learned." "His grandfather would be proud," I said, tucking the deed back in my portfolio. Robert always said rentals were about passive income. He never imagined we'd be evicting our own son. "You're not evicting your son," Carla corrected. "You're evicting a tenant who violated his lease. The fact he's also your son is his failure, not yours." The walk to my car felt like crossing a desert, long, harsh, necessary. Behind us, Matt and Bree were arguing with Fitzgerald about appeals, about fairness, about anything except the truth they'd stolen from the wrong woman. I held the deed against my chest like armor. Tomorrow, the locksmith would come. In 7 days, my property would be mine again. And somewhere in Cedar Hollow, the woman who couldn't even pay rent would own one less burden and one more lesson. Family is action, not blood. The deed was heavy in my hands, not with weight, but with finality. The 7th day arrived with unexpected drama. At 8 I stood outside the Maple Street duplex with Carla, a locksmith, and 2 Cedar Hollow sheriff's deputies. Matt and Bree had barricaded themselves inside, visible through the windows they'd refused to maintain for 2 years. "This is your final warning," Deputy Harrison called through his megaphone. "Exit the property immediately or face criminal trespass charges." The front door flew open. Bree emerged first, dragging suitcases and screaming about injustice to the growing crowd of neighbors. Matt followed, carrying boxes haphazardly packed. His contractor's bravado finally cracked. "You're making a mistake, Mum," he said as he passed me. "When you're old and alone, remember this moment." "I'll remember it," I replied calmly, "as the day I stopped being your victim." They loaded their belongings into a rented truck, downsizing from their Mercedes and pickup. I noticed. The vehicles had been repossessed after I'd stopped making their payments. As they drove away, Bree made one final gesture through the window that confirmed I'd made the right choice. The locksmith worked methodically, replacing every lock while I walked through my property for the first time in 3 years. The damage was worse than expected holes in walls from Matt's amateur renovations, destroyed landscaping from Bree's failed greenhouse project, the illegal deck already showing signs of collapse. 400,000 my ass, I muttered, calculating repair costs. But in Matt's abandoned workshop, I found something that stopped me cold. Robert's tools, his entire collection, which Matt had borrowed after the funeral and never returned. His father's hammer, the level Robert had taught him to use, the leather tool belt worn soft from decades of honest work. I sat on a sawdust-covered bench and cried not for Matt, but for Robert, who'd believed his son would honor his legacy. That afternoon, back in the courthouse, we faced each other one final time. The settlement enforcement hearing was brief but brutal. Judge Thornton ordered immediate wage garnishment of Matt's business accounts and Bree's part-time income. 25% of gross income until the debt is satisfied, he declared. Any attempt to hide assets or income will result in criminal prosecution. Fitzgerald made one last attempt. Your Honor, this will destroy their ability to maintain housing. They destroyed that themselves, Judge Thornton interrupted. They had multiple opportunities to resolve this honorably. They chose otherwise. As the court clerk processed the paperwork, Matt approached me. For a moment, his mask slipped, and I saw the boy who'd once brought me dandelions, calling them sunshine flowers. Does it feel good? He asked quietly. Winning. I didn't win anything, Matthew. I just stopped losing. We could have worked this out, as a family. I pulled out the deed one last time, holding it between us like a shield. You told everyone I couldn't even pay rent while living rent-free in my property. That wasn't family. That was parasitism. Bree's voice cut through the moment. Matt, stop begging. She's not worth it. And there it was, the final confirmation that I meant nothing to them beyond my usefulness. I tucked the deed back in my portfolio and signed my name on the garnishment authorization with a steady hand. Goodbye, Matthew, I said, turning away. You'll regret this, he called after me. I stopped at the courtroom door, looking back one final time. The only thing I regret is not doing it sooner. Outside, Logan waited by my car, his girlfriend Emma beside him. He was holding an envelope. I wanted to give you this in person, he said, handing it over. Inside was a check for $2,000. Logan, this is too much. It's from my signing bonus. The tech internship became a full-time offer. His eyes were wet. Grandma, I'm so sorry. For everything. For not standing up to them. For benefiting from their theft. For being a coward. I hugged him then. This grandson who'd found his spine too late to prevent the war, but soon enough to choose the right side. Grandpa would be proud of you, I whispered. He'd be proud of you too, Logan replied, for fighting back. As they left, Emma turned back. Mrs. Whitaker. My parents are looking for a rental. They're good people, always pay on time. I smiled. Have them call me. I have a duplex that'll be ready next month. That evening, I sat in my living room with a glass of Robert's Hidden Macallan, the deed laid out on the coffee table beside our wedding photo. The house was quiet, no demanding texts, no guilt trip calls, no family chat notifications. My phone buzzed once. A notification from the bank. Garnishment payment received 1/8/47/23. The first of many? Not enough to heal the wounds, but enough to prove the truth. I hadn't been the burden. I'd been the bank. I picked up the deed, running my finger over my signature. Eleanor N. Whitaker, sole member. Juniper Row Holdings, LLC. The paper was just paper, but what it represented was everything proof that while they'd been announcing my inability to pay rent, I'd been their landlord all along. The woman who couldn't even pay rent owned the ground they'd stood on while mocking her. I raised my glass to Robert's photo. I did it? Honey? I finally did it. The deed caught the lamplight as I set it down, my signature bold and unshakable. Tomorrow, contractors would begin repairs on my property. Next month, new tenants would move in strangers who'd pay what they owed without claiming love as an excuse for theft. But tonight, I sat with my deed and my whiskey and my freedom, finally understanding what Robert meant when he'd say, The best investment isn't in property, Nora. It's in knowing when to collect what you're owed. The deed lay before me, a simple piece of paper that had become my Declaration of Independence. I'd handed it to them in that courtroom not as a gift, but as proof that the woman they'd dismissed owned the very foundation of their lies. The door had closed behind me in that courthouse, and with it, a chapter of servitude disguised as love. The deed was mine. The victory was mine. And finally, so was my life. Thank you all for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Please comment below and let's connect. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts on this journey. Have you ever had to stand up to family who took advantage of you? Let me know in the comments.